So it was I make it sixth 3-1 defeat of the season yesterday. This time it was Bournemouth who completed the double over us for the first time since football began, really. Once again, Alfie, I'll start with you this week. The golfing quality between the two sides was pretty much clear from the start.
Yeah, another cut and paste job, really. Like you say, a sick 3-1, is it, of the season, and obviously a second 3-1 defeat against Bournemouth. And I suppose you sum it up, go 2 goals down in dreadful fashion, do a little bit of a fight back, get one back, and then the other team realise they should probably score and put the game away, and they do so with relative ease. And that was sort of the way it went. The first half was particularly dreadful. I mean, maybe Glen and Steve will have different opinions, but maybe the worst half of the season, just in terms of, the stats at half time, they had 1 shot total. Although that's a little bit of a false number because there was a couple of opportunities. Their best chances were really balls into the box that they just didn't connect with. I think Camadine had one and Amo-Ameyaw had one as well. So they might have had a goal in there somewhere. But other than that, it was all one-way traffic. The goals they conceded were mainly because they were static in their shape and Bournemouth sort of had them penned in. We talk about Bournemouth being a really sort of aggressive and intense team, a quick team, and they are that. Of course, I look at Semenyo, he leaves James Bree and Smallbone on the deck with 1 chance. They do it quickly, but their goals actually come from them moving the ball side to side and across the pitch, and just not really giving Saints a sniff. And when they do, maybe the first goal, Bednarek and Wood can do more with the ball that comes in. Smallbone is there. Maybe he can close it down more quickly. The second goal, Bednarek gives it away, and you can sort of see Aribo was following Ryan Christie. But once he thinks the danger is gone and Bednarek is going to take the ball out, he switches off for a second, and there's a lot of space. And obviously, the strike is quality. With both goals, we're talking about quality again, which Saints don't produce enough. But it has to be something to do with the amount of time the opposition have on the ball. Saints just don't have that time on the ball, and that's the big difference. And then in the second half, we do see a bit of aggression. With the goal, we see Bednarek win the ball high, Aribo win the ball high. They get it forward quickly. Tyler Dibbling's come on, brilliant run. Camadine, great strike. And like I said, it's obviously not going to be enough in the end. And we'll talk more about the team selection, but I think a lot of people probably felt from minute one that there was no chance of getting anything out of that game just because of the midfield. And Yuga Chukwu not starting, it was a puzzling decision. But I'll let Glen and Steve get more into that.
Well, Glen, you said to me yesterday when you saw that starting lineup at, was it 1:45 now, isn't it? You knew that we were never going to get anything out of that game. We were certainly not going to get a win.
Yeah, I was sat in the car waiting to. I was just waiting to hear the team before I parked the car, and I was waiting to go. And Adam Blackmore, bless him, was reading the names out, and he got. And I was just like effing and blinding in the car. Must have been very weird for passers-by.
You tempted to just turn around and go home?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, you try and convince yourself that it might work.
Yeah,
I don't know. And I was thinking, well, maybe Fernandez will play deeper, Smallbone further forward, or something. Maybe we change formation. I don't know. But I knew that if we started with Aribo and Smallbone as the midfield 2 in Urich's standard formation, that we'd have absolutely no chance. And the first 20 minutes, once the game settled down, we had that Sulemana got hacked down by Lewis Cook, who got booked, and that was a relatively promising start. But once Bournemouth settled down, from that moment on until they went 2-0 up, was absolute carnage. Man for man marking thing that we do, players getting pulled all over the place, not having it. Nathan Wood looked like what I'd look if I tried to play now at age 56. Honestly, he was just shocking. He didn't get near. He was supposed to be sort of marking David Brooks, but he wasn't anywhere. He was terrible. And he wasn't alone. Smallbone and Aribo didn't know which player to pick up, and they didn't get near anyone. I mean, Cliver seemed to be free the whole time. Bednarek was picking up Otara. Bree was picking up Semenyo. Wood was not doing anything. And yeah, Aribo and Smallbone they were just almost doing shuttle runs between players, but not really getting close to them. And the second goal, Bednarek has made the mistake and shanked it across, and it's just gone straight to Cliver, unmarked, passed it sideways to Christie, unmarked, who's absolutely smashed it. And it's just It's just so bad. I mean, and the one-on-one defending thing. Bournemouth are the anti-Russell Martin team, aren't they? Because their wingers get the ball, and there's no thought of going backwards ever. It's like, I'm going to turn, I'm going to run at you, and if someone like Semenyo goes past his marker, then someone else has got to leave their player to go and tackle him, and that leaves Semenyo with the choice of taking on the second player or playing a 1-2 off the newly vacated player. And it was just awful, and it amazed me that we didn't let in more than we did. And I think Bournemouth just kind of they eased off and tried to manage the game in much the same way that they did at their place when they were 3-0 up, and they managed the game. We got the goal out of nowhere eventually once we'd corrected some of the chronic ills off of the from the original team selection, and then Bournemouth scored again. But I mean, there was a brief 6 or 7 minute spell where Bournemouth seemed to panic at 2-1. All their arrogant, gloating, irritating fans just shut up for 5 minutes, and it looked like we might snatch something, but no, nothing really happened. And eventually they won it quite comfortably. But I was just so bored. From 20 minutes until we scored out of nowhere, it was just so dull, and there was just sort of like nothing much going on. They just kept us at arm's length really, and went through the motions. But I was very, very impressed by Bournemouth and the way they played, the way they set up.
Yeah,
it's simple football: pass and move, take the player on in a wide area when you've got the chance to do so. The defenders, no nonsense. That they got the 19-year-old at the back, Hussein, who he just doesn't do anything dumb. They
don't play like 19-year-olds, do they? They play like sort of senior professionals that have been in the game for 20 years.
If he's under any pressure, he's quite happy to put the ball out of play. He don't try and do anything clever. Sabani's the same, and I thought they were excellent. I got absolutely no complaints with getting beaten by a better side, but we didn't do ourselves any favours whatsoever. And I think Jurek had a bit of a shocker, to be honest. And I'm not having the fact that Leslie was rested either. I'm not having that because 7 days since the last game. Do me a favour.
It doesn't make any sense to me, though, like why there's no other reason why you would take him out of the team other than you feel he must be rested. And like you say, it doesn't make sense because he's had 7 days. He literally said in a press conference 2 weeks ago that we can play the same players now because it's fine to play one game a week.
Yeah.
But I can't think of any reason why you take him out because he's been really good for him. And the second he comes on, you see the difference. You see the difference in the aggression and intensity that he's always talks about. And it's not. I'm not having a dig at Will Smallbone or Joe Rebo, who both did decent things in the game, particularly Joe obviously going back and playing in defence again. But it's just, it doesn't make any sense. He's clearly should be first choice in that position.
Yeah. It's madness. And if you're going to rest him from the FA Cup game last week. It's just it's silly. Maybe he thought we could win the FA Cup. Let's give him that one.
There are a couple of changes at half time, Steve. And to be fair, we had like maybe 15, 20 minutes in the second half where we looked a bit more at it. But was that more to do with Bournemouth, do you think, taking their foot off the gas, or did we smell a bit of blood there?
I don't know. I mean, I think ultimately we got ourselves back into a shape that we've kind of been working on for a while, and as Glenn said, you had Ugochukwu in there who has been key to all of that. And shock horror, you put big, athletic, strong guy in the centre of midfield. Suddenly, you win a few more tackles. This shit isn't a novel concept, and yet you look down that starting lineup when it arrived, and you're thinking, that midfield is just going to be a vacant hole for any vaguely competent Premier League midfield to kind of have its way with. And Bournemouth's midfield at the moment is better than a vaguely competent Premier League midfield. And they just ran at us in whichever direction they fancied. One thing that is key with the way that they play, obviously they're quite happy not having the ball for long periods of the game. they're quite happy to kind of sit deep and soak up a little bit of pressure and break, because they know that probably 8 or 9 of their 10 outfield players are really, really quick. Everything is done at ludicrous pace, whereas everything we do, we've got, I think, probably 2 or 3 players who can run at any sort of pace and capacity. And yeah, anything that we try and do on the counter attack is either through, it needs to be a perfect pass, or Dibbling needs to basically dribble past 3 or 4 players, as he did in the build up to the goal. And yeah, so you're basically reducing the number of kind of ways you can realistically score against anyone. I mean, aside from somebody literally giving the ball to us, which, I mean, we've done plenty on our for the opposition in the first half of this season. Yeah, you're really going to struggle to break half decent teams down, and yeah, it's frustrating. But it all goes back to you've got to give yourself a chance in these games, and with that lineup, I mean, genuinely no idea what he could have possibly thought would happen, other than what transpired.
Is he still experimenting though? Because it's the time for that is over, surely.
Yeah,
I mean, he's been here a while. I mean, he's been here 3 months now. It's not he's not sort of new kid on the block where he doesn't know what his squad members are capable or incapable of. So I mean, yeah, he's got some injuries defensively, and that probably doesn't help in terms of the shape and how you want to set up. But actually, I would say that the lack of central defensive options actually makes it more important to play Ugochukwu for basically as many minutes as we can, because otherwise that defense is getting no protection. And I mean, we obviously said a while back, Nathan Wood had sort of 3 or 4 games where he first came into the team and he looked fairly decent. Had a good game against Villa, I think it was, and I can't remember who the other one was around that time. And yeah, okay, he then gets a niggly little injury and he's out, and comes back in, and yeah, look, yesterday he's looked like a fish out of water, and yeah, right move to take him off. But yeah, I mean, has he really been kind of looking at it in training? I don't know. But then I guess you don't really want to have to start with a Rebo at centre back. That's kind of your sort of fallback plan when everything's gone tits up, as it did at Ipswich, although we were obviously still well in the game at that point. But yeah, when you're 2-0 down, it could have been 3. Ramsdale made one decent save towards the end of that first half. But yeah, we've sat here quite a few weeks now under Juric, where we've said, I mean, he's clearly got that starting lineup wrong, and the changes he's made has had a positive impact, and it's given us something to go with. But often by then, as yesterday, we've been out of the game already. So all you're doing is you're giving yourselves a sort of veil of respectability, but after you've already gift wrapped the 3 points to the opposition. And yeah, I mean, you've got to be able to start a game properly, as well as kind of manage it through the middle. And yeah, I mean, we can do 45 minutes kind of at competence. The rest of it at the moment is complete shambles, and that first half was an absolute mess.
Joe Aribo, Alfie's turning into a right utility player, and I don't think that's a good thing. Is that kind of highlighting some of the weaknesses in the squad? He's played everywhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tweeted earlier, actually, just sort of looking back at what he did, even with Rangers. I mean, he has played as a centre-back. He's played as a number 6, a number 8, a number 10 on both wings and up front in the last 3 years, in the last sort of 30 months. I mean, to be fair, to his credit, you've got to respect it. He's done well. But Ivan Juric, I mean, he was asked about Bournemouth before and after the game, obviously, and he sort of made quite a point about talking about how simple Bournemouth's model is and what they do, and that it's just quite simply that the manager has a clear idea and he is backed by the club with the players that he needs to play that idea. And he said that before the game and he said it after the game. And clearly he wanted a left-footed centre-back. So we're talking about Joe Aribo being a utility player. He wanted that left-sided player, that left-footed player, and he didn't get it. The club failed to bring him in on deadline day. They felt they were let down by Abubakar Silla, of course. So that feels to me what he's kind of referring to. You know, he feels that he can't really play the way that the players can't play the way he wants to because he hasn't got the tools. And yeah,
why is he still trying to play that way then?
Well, this is. I mean, I've just watched Man United play Spurs, and Ruben Amorim plays a very similar system.
Game that was.
Yeah, terrible game. I went into it thinking it's one of those ones where it could be 5-5, but of course it never is. But I mean, Ruben Amorim, he's got to be on fraud watch surely because he does the same thing every week and makes no changes. And it is a manager's job to adapt, and we've had this all season with Russell Martin and now with Ivan Juric. But the modern way is they have their ideas and they stick to them. But actually, if you look at the second half, they basically played a 4 at the back for all of the second half. Even when Sugawara came on, he was kind of playing as more of a right midfielder. It looked like a flat 4 to me. So he's obviously got a different way of playing, and maybe they should consider that. If he's not got a left-footed centre back, just go with 4-3-3, go with something different. But he's played this 3-4-2 on his entire career, hasn't he, Ivan? So I guess we'll see how many changes he makes next week.
I'm going to ask you about Ivan and his future in just a moment before we finish wrapping this up. I also want to talk about Troy Deeney's comments, Glenn. I don't know if you saw these. I thought, first of all, maybe we could get his 5-year-old son on because he seemed to sum it up.
Yeah.
Well. I know Alfie wrote this up as well today. He was speaking on TalkSport and he says, they're really bad. I've got my wife and my son who came down to the game. We spent Valentine's Day down here. I'd love to know where they went for a meal on Friday night, like O'Neill's or something. He says, I just said to my 5-year-old son, was that any good? And he said, Southampton are trash, Dad. He says, so when you think about it, a 5-year-old who's not very up to date on football, he can't see anything that they're doing. And the final bit, which I thought was interesting, was he was talking about Jan Bednarek. And he says, the centre-half Jan Bednarek, I was running rings around him 3 years ago. I haven't run in a year, but I put money that I could run past him now.
I think there's some hyperbole. I don't think he could ever run past Jan Bednarek, to be honest with you.
No.
Well, bits of it ring true, don't they?
Bits of it ring true. We'll talk about Jan Bednarek first. I actually feel a bit sorry for him. This is another thing I do not like about the way we defend this man-for-man thing. Bednarek is on a hiding to nothing. He is the last man all the time. And one of the things that Deeney said was that Bednarek ends up making last-ditch tackles all the time, like 4 or 5 a game. He's only got to get one of those wrong, and he's probably going to get sent off. If you think back to the Ipswich game, he had a big lunge in when Delap scored. He had a big lunge in to try and stop him, didn't he? And Delap went through and scored. If he caught him there, he was getting sent off. It's as simple as that. And this system that Juric has, this one-on-one defending, which basically means there's no cover ever, especially if you're the last man. It must be horrific to be a centre-back trying to play that. Usually you've got 2 centre backs on one. If he beats the first one, the second one covers round, all that sort of stuff. We don't do that. So I do feel a bit sorry for Bednarek. Having said that, he did mess up on both goals yesterday, basically, because it's his man who scores the first goal and he's shanked the clearance into the middle of the park for the second goal. So,
Glenn, you're right about the system, though. Right? I mean, it must be confusing for these players. I mean, if you actually look at the first goal, I think the one where the cross comes in, you'll say is in between Bednarek and Wood. It's Paul Amo-Ameyaw at right back who gets skinned the first time when the ball comes in before it's recycled. And then if you look at who's in right centre back when the ball eventually comes in, it's not James Bree. James Bree's in centre midfield. It's Matty Fernandez, because clearly they've got this idea of once somebody goes, you've got to fill in. I get that. That's standard football stuff. But it's leaving players in completely alien positions constantly.
Yeah, it's stupid. It's what it is. So you got a 6'7" right back who can't run, and you've got a 5'6" central defender. So I'm sure good teams realise that they can draw, that they can end up, they can move our players around, and we'll end up with the wrong players in the wrong positions trying to defend. And
that's what I think Bournemouth are doing. They had 60% possession in the first half yesterday. Steve made the point of the fact that normally they just move it forward quickly. I didn't think they did that yesterday. I think they knocked it around the park quite methodically, and I think it's for that exact reason. I think they felt they could draw people out
probably,
and then cause carnage.
Yeah, and the thing is, we all spoke about this last week. We knew that was coming. We knew that Bournemouth would move the ball around and they would press us and they would cause us problems. And again, they got a very fluid front line. Everyone knows that. We knew they'd cause us problems. Can't remember which one of us said it, but someone did. So to me, we set up with the perfect game plan to get stuffed by Bournemouth. It was like if Iraola could have picked a setup to play against, he would have picked what we did yesterday, and it was just pathetic. Just thought it was pathetic from start to finish. Thought it was terrible decisions from the management, from the manager. With the way we set up, the players he picked. I just thought everything was horrendous. I mean, I know he's not the highest paid manager in the Premier League, but he's paid a decent amount of money to try and come up with something that's not shit.
But I don't understand how because I mean, by all accounts, this is basically the system that he's always played throughout his managerial career. How has it ever worked? Maybe it
works in Italy or Spain or wherever he's managed before, when the pace of the game is not as quick. Maybe players can adapt and they can go from one position to another, and there's just a little bit more time to do it and get yourself set. Maybe that's it. I don't know, but
I think there has to be some accounting for the fact that if your job is to try and turn what you've got into something that's not shit, and all you've got is a pile of shit, you're going to find that really hard. So there has to be some accounting for the tools he's working with as well. And also, there's good players in there, but clearly they're not good enough.
I agree, but I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about this guy. I mean, so imagine you go to your kitchen and you want to make yourself a fry up. And you need the basic ingredients to do that, don't you? You need the eggs, sausages, tomatoes, bacon. If you've only got the eggs, you don't make a fry up. You don't put a potato in there or a lump of cheese or something and go, right, I'm going to make a fry up, and then wonder why it tastes shit at the end of it, because you haven't got the ingredients. You haven't got the ingredients to play that way or make that. You just haven't got it, so you can't do it. And
can we get that analogy animated for the? I want to see like a cartoon Glen going into the kitchen.
It's not the best. Yeah, all I've got is a potato and some dog biscuits. I know. I'll use these substitute ingredients and it will taste marvelous. But no, I'm sorry. I'm just not having it. I just thought it's like he set us up to fail. It's almost like he didn't think about the opposition we were playing against at all. And just thought he could put whatever 11 on the pitch he wanted and play my system, that'll work.
We did this last
terrible.
Week. You're kind of picking a team to play against completely different opposition.
Yeah,
it's bizarre. Yeah. Like, why would you play against Burnley, who have got very traditional sort of big lump centre halves? Why would you play against them with a false nine and not actually try and kind of get balls in behind them? It was absolute nonsense last week, and this week is kind of more of the same, and it's just ridiculous. Like, if we can see it, and we saw it before the game when we previewed this last week, we saw what was going to happen, but we kind of, I guess, we falsely gave Juric credit that he might actually pick our best players in their best positions. Fair enough. We got that one wrong, didn't we, lads? But we could see that where the obvious issues were going to come by, and it doesn't seem as if he spent any of last week at Staplewood working on trying to negate any of that. It's bizarre.
I think I know what the answer to the question is going to be, Steve, but are we heading towards a change of manager in the summer? Is this another naff appointment? And is that why we're kind of like relaxed about it? I was looking at the Leicester fans and their protest at the weekend. They were protesting about a lack of ruthless decision-making, a confused approach to managerial appointments and transfers. I mean, you kind of like read through their very well-worded statement, but it's like, tick, tick, tick. We could copy and paste. Are we kind of relaxed because we know where we're heading and we know that they're just going to change manager in the summer?
I mean, I find the Leicester protest bizarre. I mean, come on, lads, you're a medium-sized club and you've won literally everything in the last 20 years. So no, piss off, lads. You've got nothing to whinge about.
I'm not suggesting that you and I print a banner, by the way, and take it along.
No,
I think we know where we're going. With this.
There are certainly some similarities. I mean, sort of specifically on the manager, I think we've discussed this multiple times. I mean, even before the guy came in, we were saying realistically, who's already got a respectable record in this country, who was going to take the job in the situation that we were in, with 4 points from 16 games. Who was ever going to take that job and be a credible appointment? So you're always then looking for someone outside who basically just fancy giving it a go. Stick themselves in the shop window, see what happens. I mean, if you can kind of generate some sort of upturn in performances and results, then okay, yeah, fair play to you. You've done something that the previous guy was gradually failing more and more to do. But I think we were always fairly sort of pragmatic and knowing that this was going to be the likely outcome, where you get somebody in who's kind of almost a patsy appointment, really. They're going to kind of drain the opprobrium and abuse from people as we continue to lose games as the season wears on. And you've given him a relatively short-term deal, but one long enough that was attractive for them to actually take the job in the first place. And then you get to the summer and you say, okay, thanks. You've kind of stood there and taken the hit, been our lightning rod for 6 months. Here's your nice little payoff, and we'll all go our separate ways. I mean, let's be honest, it would be absolutely staggering now if we weren't sitting here in July, August with a new manager to discuss in the Championship.
We'll do Player of the Week in a minute. Anything else on Bournemouth? Well, I thought. Do you know what? I thought one of my highlights was Sharky's, the sports bar in Southampton, offering free pizzas if Southampton won, and advertising that on the big screens. I don't think the chef even got out of bed. I think he had a night off.
Yeah. Advertising it at half time, 2-0 down. I thought that's a very safe bet, isn't it?
There was that story of the pub giving away the pint, wasn't it? Every time Forest scored.
It's Forest against Brighton. And they won 7-0.
That was never going to be the case with free pizzas.
The only thing I was going to say about the game is I did feel for Will Smallbone, and I didn't think it was right, actually. I know that I'm not necessarily the right person to say this because I don't pay my hard-earned money to be there, and I appreciate that. And obviously, every fan has a right to an opinion and all sorts of things like that. But I mean, he is one of the players who you can 100% guarantee is trying their best. Nobody has ever said a bad word about him. I've never met anyone who said a bad word about Will as a trainer, as a professional, or as a person. And he doesn't pick the team. So even if he has had a bad game, which Ivan says he has after, it's not his fault that he's in that team. And I thought that jeering him and then booing him when he came off was a bit too harsh for me. I just think that celebrate Diblin coming on, but I thought that Will didn't deserve that.
Do you agree, Glenn? It's a bit like he was trying
absolutely
like to me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not his biggest fan, freely admit that, but it's to do with what he can and can't do as a footballer. Jurek said that he trained well during the week, which is I hate that. I hate that. Everyone should train well. It's about what you can do when the intensity is ramped up, which it isn't in training, and when you're not playing against our midfielders. In training games. So, again, this is the thing. I don't think the manager thought forward at all to how this was actually going to go. So I feel that Will was a bit of a sacrificial lamb out there. It was never going to work. It's only going to work for him in midfield if he's got two real athletes alongside him. As Alfie said, it's not his fault he gets put in the team. He's doing his best. He probably is hoping that the manager picks a team to get the most out of him, but that obviously didn't. He did some good things when he was on the ball. On the ball, he did some good things, but he's always like that. He got a bit ragged in the second half just before
he was on a booking as well, wasn't he? Though, so that was
he did.
That was an absolute nonsense. That booking as well.
Yeah,
him getting a booking for lightly tapping the ball 2 or 3 yards, while I think there were 5 or 6 in the second half where we get given a free kick and suddenly the ball has been lumped 50 yards down the field.
Yeah. Oh, there's another thing which is obviously Sulemana against Cook, we highlighted that last week as being an area. So gets booked after, I think, about 6 minutes. And then in the aftermath of the second goal, he calls Sulemana over and switches him to the other side, where he was useless, by the way. He was useless until we switched him back to the left. And then, so all the pressure, any pressure that was on Lewis Cook to not put a tackle in and not accidentally bring anyone down, that was our manager, just totally eradicated that by moving the one player who could sprint past him at will to the other side of the pitch. So that was mental. I didn't understand that at all. I guess it was probably to plug some sort of defensive gap that was that had been caused by the original selection and obviously being 2-0 down. But I don't understand why he moved Sulemana. That was the one thing that was going relatively well for us at that stage, and he decided to kill that and move him to the other side of the pitch. So again, absolutely mind blowing. But yeah, there you go.
Final thing on the game then is Player of the Week. It was Wellington that won last week. I think maybe it's his first time, maybe second time he's won. Looking at the team from Saturday, it's only really going to be Ramsdale, unless anybody else wants to chuck any other names into the mix. Nope.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sulemana scored, didn't he? It was good. Nice.
Yeah, first Premier League
good,
goal
good
in
finish.
A couple of years, wasn't it?
18
months,
first Premier League goal since May 2023. I mean, he needs to just keep scoring, doesn't he? Really, he needs to.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he obviously gave that interview to the Match Club program. Did anyone see that a couple of weeks ago?
I saw you all write up of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a very un-club program like interview. I mean, really, it was 1,500 words, and 1,300 were him saying that he's been, blasted as a player with a bad attitude falsely, and that everyone's doubted him and all this sort of stuff. Fair enough, come out, have your say, but he needs to be able to back that up, and his performances have been really good under Ivan Juric, but they're just missing that final bit, and that is the goals and the assists, isn't it? It's the final action, and he missed that for a lot of the game yesterday as well. But if he can keep on getting a couple of goals, then good for him. It was a good finish, actually. Nice little set from Paul and a good finish. So.
All right, we'll put Ramsdale and maybe Sulemana then in that case.